Welcome to the Firehouse Logbook Podcast. I'm your host, Robbie Dawson, and this is the second in a series of episodes where I get to talk about the television series Emergency. With the passing of Randolph Mantooth just a couple of weeks ago and seeing all the comments, I reached out through Facebook to say, hey, who wants to come and share some stories? And I got a lot of good feedback, and the episode with Fire Chiefs Jack Jones and Bob Eanes just published today as we're recording this, and that's out in the wild, so to speak. But this one I'm kind of looking forward to too, because this is going to involve a couple of my colleagues from back in my old department, and we all worked together, worked alongside each other, or at least worked adjacent. So it'd be kind of interesting to see their experiences in Chesterfield Fire and EMS and how emergency played a role in that. And with that, I'm going to say just thanks a lot to you guys. First off, I'll introduce you going down the line here. First and foremost, retired Assistant Chief Lee Williams. Lee, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good. So Lee's, for those of you who don't know Lee, still involved in the business, so to speak. I think you're still doing some IMT work and some training out in the wild. So working on some of that as well, aren't you?
Correct. I'm volunteer assistant chief in Blackstone, which is where I started off, and also doing incident management team work for the U.S. Forest Service.
Yeah. Well, you got some work going on right now out west for sure.
Yes.
Some of those wildfires happening. Next, go to Don. Go ahead, Lee.
I was just going to say I'm off from the Forest Service from now until August the 8th because we're heading out of town on vacation. So I'm marked down.
Good plan. Next, I'll move over to retired firefighter paramedic Donnie Hall. Donnie, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Talk about tech service. You were in tech services for a while there toward the end of your career, and I think Lee could have used some of those technical support services a little while ago, but we'll get to that in a minute.
I faked my way through it.
Yeah, well, hey, you did quite well. Next up, coming to us from the great state of West by God, Virginia, retired Battalion Chief Bob Avsek. Bobby, good to see you. How you been?
I've been doing good. Doing good.
Yeah, you've been retired probably the longest of all of us. What year did you retire?
2007.
Yep. Lee, what was your year?
Gracious.
Yeah, you've been out almost 20 years now. So you're still involved with the fire service kind of tangentially. You want to touch base on what you're working on these days?
Well, currently I'm the operations chief for the Fire Service Psychology Association. And we're made up of fire service folks, psychologists, master's level clinicians, and we're working to bridge the gap between psychology and the fire service. You know, and that bridge is to one side is to develop more culturally competent clinicians who understand the fire service, understand what firefighters do, why they do it, how they do it, the unique aspects of the job, the unique stressors of the job. And then on the fire service side is creating more awareness and knowledge about what psychology does have to offer. You know, everybody thinks of psychology as treatment, but you know, there's many different aspects to it, from pre-employment assessments to industrial and organizational psychology, and a lot of good stuff.
Yep. Yeah, and if you figure out why we do what we do, boy, that's probably a master's thesis in and of itself right there, I'm guessing. And last but not least, the only non-retired member of our panel here today, the one Captain Joe Harvey, currently in the Fire Marshal's office, now the Deputy Fire Marshal in the county. Joe, glad to have you with us, and thanks for being a backup studio there. Lee had challenges with his computer, lived in the same neighborhood, so Lee and Joe are occupying the same space at the Harvey estate. So, Joe, good to see you.
Hey, glad to be here. Glad to be the young one on the panel.
Yeah.
Right.
You're getting close, aren't you? How many more years do you got until you're eligible, or till you're looking at it?
I'm eligible now. I'm looking in the fall of 27 time frame.
There you go. Well, it does get a little bit more fun when you can say I can go tomorrow, kind of thing.
That's exactly right.
Yep.
Well, I'm gonna pitch a couple of questions out to the panel here, just to kind of get the ball rolling, and you can wave if you want to speak next, or there's a hand raise feature in there either way. But what do you guys remember first about when that television show first came out, An Emergency, and were you in the job, or did it spawn you to go get in the fire department, or did it spur you to become a paramedic? Because I think everybody on this call has been paramedic anyway, at least for some time. So who wants to start us off?
I'm going to say I wasn't born when the show came out.
Say that one more
I'm just
time.
a rerun kind of fellow.
You're a
I'll go
rerun kind of
second
guy.
by saying that I'm probably the oldest, and I had been volunteering for a couple of years, fire only, when the show came out. I was freshman at Virginia Tech and a member of Virginia Tech Rescue Squad. And we used to have parties every night when emergency came on, and we had daiquiri parties. And then after the show went off every Saturday night, the parties extended on until sometimes daylight. But
I find that hard to believe that there might have been a daiquiri flowing at Virginia Tech, but there's probably a story or two to come out of that one.
But looking at the show, prior to this, I was interested fire only, not that interested in EMS, and started getting a lot more interested in EMS with the show. And I went into banking when I first graduated, but this show eventually led me directly into going to work as a professional firefighter.
Joe, what about you? Your dad was involved around the volunteer companies. Is that where you got exposed to the fire service, or was it through the reruns?
Yeah, I think it was through my dad, and then just once I found out about the show and seeing the reruns, it just kind of welded those two together and, created a passion. I like the fact that, those guys were dual roles. When I was hanging around with Dad at Company 1 back in the day, there were only a handful of paramedics in the fire department. And just seeing those guys and how they interacted, I'm like, man, those guys are almost like these guys on the TV show.
We were exactly like the guys on the TV show. That's what I'm sticking by.
Yeah, I mean, right off, like Doug Hankey was one of them that I remember being at Company 1 and, just sparked that interest and, just allowed me to pursue that.
To start off with, weren't the first paramedics the ones assigned to MedFlight?
Yeah, I think there were a couple of CTs. Bobby Avsek was one of the early cardiac techs in the department, right. But the first registry paramedics were that first group of 5 that were on MedFlight in the inaugural year that was theirs, for sure.
I'm going to say this right now. Doug Hankey definitely had the Johnny Gage swagger.
He might have had the hair, too. We had a conversation with Bob Eanes about Johnny Gage's hair on the episode before, and he had the style for sure.
Hey, just in case you guys missed it, but Roy DeSoto just turned 80.
Yep, I saw that today, too. He turned 80 years old. So I think they were pretty close in age, and everything I saw that Kevin Tye and Randolph Mantooth were pretty close friends even after the show went off the air, and they were always being seen at events and promotions for their foundation out in LA as well. Donnie, how about? Go ahead.
Yeah, let me jump in here. Most people think of emergency and think of Mantooth and Johnny and stuff like that, but I was just under 10 years old when it first came out. The initial episode, but I watched it all the time right after my dad had his accident, and we had one TV in the house, and that was on emergency every time it came on. But my hero was DeSoto, not Johnny. He was calm, and he was collected, and you never saw him get upset, and to me, that's where I started to relate to it.
It's a good point.
Did you guys ever? I mean, was it? I mean, Donnie and Joe, your dads were involved in the fire service before, and Lee, you were connected to it before the show came out. Bobby, what about you? Were you involved in the fire service before '72, or did that kind of spawn you to go that way?
Well, I was a volunteer with my volunteer fire department in Harrisonville, New Jersey, which is where I grew up, South Jersey. And then after the TV show came on, watched that every night that it was on. And, I said, man, that's what I want to do. Well, unfortunately, at that time, and it's still pretty much the case today, there just weren't a lot of paid positions in South Jersey. Philadelphia, like most major cities in the late 70s, was, they were laying people off. They weren't hiring people. And so I spent a year and a half in minor league baseball as an umpire. And when they at the end of the second season, they said, you know what, we think you might make it to Double A, but you're not going to. And I said, well, you know what? Tried that, didn't work. So I went home, and I shared a bedroom with my brother Tim, and we had a big map of the United States on the wall. And Tim had a dartboard, and I took 3 darts, stood across the room, threw them at the map. 2 of them landed in the Atlantic Ocean, and 1 of them landed just north of Richmond, Virginia, which I now know was Henrico County. And so I had my EMT, and I contacted the Office of EMS and got in touch with Allied Ambulance Service in Richmond, and I packed up everything I owned in my Volkswagen Super Beetle and drove to Richmond. And from there, I started applying to every fire department in the Commonwealth, and actually got my first position with the James City County Fire Department as a firefighter medic. And I'll never forget that first day on the job, man. It's like just like Johnny and Roy.
Yeah. So that brings up kind of the next question: is did you do anything on the job that influenced you in your role as a firefighter paramedic? And I know I've already had a conversation, I think, with somebody on this call. I know I've had it with somebody else. Just the opening sequence of the Bristol jets popping into the air. I know we've all probably done that at some point in time, but what else might have been an influence on you when you're out there in the street and you're thinking, boy, this is just like Johnny and Roy?
I got a couple of things on that, but I'll just start off with, I think we're the ones that had the conversation about the Bristol jet.
Joe said it too, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I was a brand new cardiac tech, had just gotten certified, and I was riding Manchester's daytime ambulance that we ran, and had my first chance to do his Bristol jet pop, and it went. I think my comment to it was, "Wow, that worked," and then hooked it up and pushed the medicine, and it went up and hit the ceiling. I said, "Ooh, I better calm that one down a little bit." But yeah, I mean, had images of the Bristol jet in my mind when I was doing it, and loved it.
Anybody else guilty of that?
And then the other thing that I remember most is on emergency, seeing them be able to send a strip to the hospital. That was the first time I'd seen that, and then we were able to do that.
I remember going through paramedic school. John Kirtley would actually show episodes of emergency during breaks of class. Well, fast forward, I go to Company 11, and Donnie, you talked about Roy. I kind of looked at Dave Powell. We all know him as Flounder. And myself I felt like kind of the modern day Johnny and Roy, And I remember we had a call. Dude was in VTAC with a pulse, and I was in class. I wasn't certified yet, and Flounder said, "Hey man, get the lidocaine. We're going to give this guy some lidocaine." And I'm like, "Oh boy, I get to do this." Bristol jet pop. Well, it didn't work out well, because when I popped it, the vial of lidocaine broke in my hand. I didn't have my thumb up quite high enough to get that plastic piece to pop, but luckily we had another one in the box, and gave the man some lidocaine and
Gave it a little bit less effort the next time around.
Yeah. And then I got to call the hospital, and first time kind of calling the hospital, giving a critical report to a doctor. And I don't know if all of us on this call remember Dr. Irvin at Chippenham.
Yeah.
And so somehow he was on the radio, and I told him what we had done, and he said, "That lidocaine's good shit, isn't it?"
On the radio?
Yes, sir.
Bless his heart. Yeah, that was still back in the days of I call it, Mother May I EMS. You couldn't start an IV, you couldn't give an medication without calling the hospital on that APCOR, that coronary observation radio, and saying, "Mother, may I start an IV or defib," or whatever it was. So
Yeah, that was changing right as I got my cardiac tech. My first year, we had to call on everything. And I was kind of used to it because I watched the show all the time. And it was like, well, they called, so that must be how it is. Matter of fact, the first time that they came to us and said, well, y'all can start IVs. You don't need to call on that. And you can do shocks. You don't need to call on that. And I was like, I'm not sure about this.
you're giving me the responsibility now, doctor.
I tell you, aside from individual things or whatever, I think what really struck me was seeing how people in a fire station interact with one another, and then like Donnie was just mentioning, that how to interact with hospital folks, when you got to the ER, and yeah. I tried to date a couple of nurses in the ER when I was on the job in the city of Richmond. One worked out for a while.
Yeah. Well, we'll leave those stories for the behind the scenes episode. We'll get together one and tell those. Well, what do you think? And I'll tell you my Bristojet story. And this was I was at 14, and I think it had to have been JP and Mark Berry, when they were going through the CT or paramedic program at the time, and I was kind of letting them do skills at calls and handing arrests, and Paul Mauger had come with us as a battalion chief, and I'm running the code. I got Jeff Cox doing CPR, and I think the ambulance crew had gotten there, was doing ventilations, and I got Mark working this and JP working that, and I'm going to give the drug, and I did the Bristojet thing, and I watched it go to the ceiling, and I did kind of screwed it together, and afterwards, Mauger did kind of an after-action debrief. He goes, "What were you thinking right then?" I said, the first thing that popped into my mind was I had to get more height out of that because the ceiling fan was turning, and I was trying to hit the ceiling fan with the caps, and I missed it. So that was my cap story.
You always got to have a good target.
That's right. That's right. Well, let me ask y'all this. We were all in the field a lot more, I think, than Chief Eanes was and Chief Jones. What do you think the public thought about emergency being on TV, the ones that would actually see it, and then having us show up on the big yellow fire trucks? Do you think there was some expectation that they had that we couldn't meet, or do you think we were meeting whatever expectations they might have? What do you think the public's perception of that show was?
Well, I think that, that show ran, 72 to 73? And, Chief Eanes got the first EMTs on the job in 77, 78. So I know on many occasions I ran into people wanting to know, why did a fire truck come to my house when I was having a heart attack?
I remember those conversations.
Yep.
And they're probably still happening today when they happen like that, I'm guessing.
Well, if you think about it, though, in the early 80s when I came on, so I was hired in 80, got out of recruit school in 81, and went to the station. But even then, the fire department was the backup to the rescue squad. So we would get there and stabilize until the rescue squad got there. When Manchester or Forest View showed up, we'd go, okay, see you later, in most cases. And that started to change mid-'80s, where that we started to do more and more. So I think when the public looked at that show, they were looking at, okay, well, on this show, the fire department does everything. And in Chesterfield, the fire truck gets there, but then they leave and the rescue squad takes over. So it was a little bit different than the show, but until we started to take over the care and everything.
I think the show definitely improved the perception of fire and EMS service all over the United States. And Chesterfield was thankful to Chief Eanes' vision, was right on the forefront of moving into EMS. And so I think the show helped bring a lot of respect to fire and EMS personnel. I think prior to EMS, a lot of people that were not involved in the fire service had the idea that firefighters just sat around the fire station all day, did nothing but sleep, waiting for a fire call to come in. And when fire and EMS started together, they started seeing us out on the street more and realized that it was more to it. In addition to that, I think the expectations and the education level of the firefighters moved up probably about the same time that the show came on, because fire and EMS was becoming more and more involved and required people to do more.
I was going to hit. I had a question right there about that on the EMS side. You mentioned about the perception of people, and unless you're at Company 12 in Ettrick, you probably did just sleep all day. That's an inside joke to the Chesterfield crew. But and one of the things that Chief Jones mentioned on the last episode was they showed them in the fire station doing firefighter stuff, cleaning apparatus, maintaining equipment, doing district study, doing training, painting fire hydrants, and doing the things that we all did on a routine basis that the public didn't know. You know, you're right. People thought we were in there playing checkers or taking a nap. But they showed that what is real life for what we were, at least during my generation when I was in the station. You had to do self-study training, you did shift training, you did district study, maintenance, and on and on and on and on.
Well, I think the reason that the show articulated all of that so well was due to Jim Page. You know, definitely. I mean, he was a battalion chief with L.A. County, and he was the technical consultant. And I read a piece. Well, matter of fact, it's in this latest issue of Crackle magazine was an interview that had been done with Mantooth not too long ago, and he said that one of the things was the background work that they'd had to do. They rode with L.A. County firefighters and fire paramedics and
they went to paramedic class, yeah.
Yeah, and Page was, a stickler for detail.
I think Page had go ahead, Bobby.
And he was such an influence on that show. In fact, they said that the producers wanted to name Mantooth's character Johnny Page, and Page said no.
They got close, and I've heard that too. Johnny Gage is a tip of the hat to Jim Page, for sure.
Jim Page had a heck of a lot to do with the show, and technical advisor, as you said, and previous battalion chief with L.A. County. So he had a tremendous influence, but also all of L.A. County had a huge influence. They picked a good nationwide department to host this show that brought instant recognition nationwide and respect. So they did a great job as far as picking a county that was well known, widely watched, and that got people's attention.
You could really call that show in publishing. They talk about evergreen articles that pretty much can stand the test of time. And I think that's true of the show Emergency. I mean, you can look at that today and go, that's not a whole lot different than the way we do it today.
Yeah, with the exception of Manila Rope and the way they tied in, that's another thing that always stuck in my mind. But you mentioned how realistic Jim Page and all the producers wanted to have it, and I had a opportunity to meet with a guy named Ron Mason. He was the fire chief in Tampa in the mid '70s. And in that episode, he talked about how the producers from the TV show Emergency would come to Tampa, spend a week, and just talk to people and go, "Hey, tell me about a call you went on." And that would become the incidents that Station 51 and the crews in L.A. County would actually run. In addition to the types of calls they ran in L.A., it seems like the producers were out there scouring the web, or at the time the fire scenes, for realistic scenarios that made good stories that they could put on that show.
And I think that speaks very highly. You kind of mentioned it. There was no internet then. If you wanted to learn about something, you had to get out there and see it being done. So the time that all of the characters spent with L.A. County firefighters and as you say, going to other departments and seeing how they did it, and the types of calls that they responded to, I think that just added a tremendous level of authenticity to what they were doing.
I think one thing also that they got right was the firehouse banter, the firehouse relationships,
the practical joke.
That was just a really good insight into that, gave the public like fire station life. I think they did a really good job of that.
And one of the things we've talked about is what was real life and what was Hollywood. I think the station life was real life. I think that is very similar to what goes on in the fire stations when we got hired, as well as being very similar to what goes on in the stations now. So they captured that well, and I think that the station life probably influenced a lot of people to go into fire and EMS as a career, because they watched what went on in a station, and it changed their perception from some of the old days where they thought the firefighters sat around and played checkers and slept until the alarm went off. And at that point in time, a lot of young people who may be volunteering in the fire EMS service figured out that this is something I could do and enjoy and get paid for it and do what I've always wanted to do.
Joe, you're still on the job. Do you think it's really that same kind of environment today? Because I hear from people who are recently retired or about to retire that because of the call volume and because of the magic little triangles that we keep in our hands, that people don't do the types of things that we all did, sitting around a kitchen table or watching movies in the evening like it was. Do you think that culture has changed any?
I think yes, I think it has changed. I think it's, different station to station, and the shifts, obviously play a big factor in that. I know some of the stations have gone to, for a long time, dinner time was like sacred in the fire station. And, then like you said, everybody having a cell phone, there weren't conversations, and a couple of the stations have gone to everybody putting their phone in a box. And,
that sounds like Kevin Spaulding.
Not on the phone during dinner time and lunchtime, and, but I think some of the banter still goes on, and, practical jokes. I don't think that'll ever go away. The only issue is there's just not as much time to be able to plan those practical jokes out anymore because they're running calls.
A little less opportunity and a little more spontaneity, if you will. Well, let's. I kind of wanted to shoot for 30 minutes or so for this, just to share these stories. But anything else? Well, let me ask you this: the new firefighters coming along. Those 20-ish year olds that are just getting into the job for whatever reason they have for wanting to be part of the service. What do you think they would get if they went back and watched a season or two of Emergency from the 70s? What do you think they would take away from that?
Well, I think they'd get a huge dose of what Joe just talked about. The one thing you hear these days about younger people getting into the fire service is they lack the social skills. Between helicopter parents and the internet and cell phones, these folks are coming in and they don't have those social skills that many of us already had when we got into the department. And I think that you could use those reruns today as an example of this is what the camaraderie and the inclusiveness of your shift or your station, that's something that I think today's company officers would do well to use that kind of visuals and those models to highlight the fact that, hey, you're here, you're part of this team, and this is how we work as a group.
I will say that since seeing the news about Johnny, I guess it kind of sparked me to go back and watch several episodes over the last week or so, and man, it truly, what they did then is not much different. I mean, honestly, what they were doing on the TV show sometimes is more accurate than the current TV shows related to fire and EMS.
I think it is
on TV.
Yep, exactly
and
right.
Just seeing some of those guys and listening to some of it over the last week or so, having been on the job for 30 years, I was like, wow, man, a lot of this stuff is really, really like the way we would do it.
So change the avenue. So somebody wants to join the fire department today because of what they're seeing on Chicago Fire. How disappointed might they be?
I watched one episode. I couldn't take it.
Yep.
I've watched about one episode of each of these programs, Chicago Fire and whatever the rest of the names of them are, and they are so much like a soap opera. I don't even go back to it.
Well, Robbie,
and don't even get me started on Backdraft.
That's right. Come on, man. That's a class. That's a training film.
When I came in the fire marshal's office, Robbie took me in a burnt-out house and put gasoline on the wall. And
Don't tell that story. Don't tell that story.
he was like, "Man, don't you see it? Can't you feel it? It's breathing." That's how he taught me how to be a fire investigator.
Yeah. Donnie, pick this up for me, will you? Because you might get me in trouble here.
When I was in TSU, and I know it's been 17 years now since I was in TSU, we actually started running Emergency on our TV station. And at first I did just one or two episodes just to break up things or show something different. And I got probably about 30 or 40 requests from the field. And it wasn't the old guys from the field. It was the younger guys from the field that would call me up and say, "Hey man, can we see more of this?" So we started running the episodes of Emergency every day. And I worked in the station a couple of times, and they would take a break to sit down and watch the show Emergency on the 99 channel.
Yeah, that was the old.
That's great to hear.
Call it closed circuit, but it was kind of the department's internal cable network. Yeah, that's cool. Well, thankfully today, I think Cozy TV and a couple others, My TV, some of those FETV, those guys are showing those reruns, and I've got a bunch of them recorded on my DVR in the other rooms.
Well, I can tell you today there's probably not a fire station that when a call drops that the alert tone that comes from the computer is the Squad 51 alert tone.
Yeah, you guys aren't going to be. You guys might not be able to hear this, but I'll see if I can play it here and see if it'll come across to you.
I know.
That's the one. That's the one.
And who can never forget KMG 665?
If I'm logged into CADS, if a structure fire drops, that's the sound that comes across any computer that's logged into CADS.
Only difference is they then turn around and look at the gigantic TV on the wall to see where they're going to.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, they didn't have
Had
to go down
write
to
it down.
scribble it down on a, and then KMG 365. We're gone. Well, guys, that's thanks for the stroll down memory lane for that one. Anything else you want to share about the episode? I got one last question for you. I'll kind of give it a round robin and see what you guys want to talk about. And what I'll do is I'll start with Joe, since you're the young man in the crowd, and ask the question of which of the characters you want to be, and we can't repeat any of them. So before we get to that, anything else about the show you think was a big influence on you or the department? And I'll maybe ask, what parts of Chesterfield Fire and EMS do you think closely reminded you of emergency in Station 51?
If it's all right, I'll start that one off.
Send it.
I felt when I was at Station 8, back with Danny Jenkins and Hoo and those guys down there, before we went on the ambulance, we ran a squad. We ran a Suburban packed full of ALS gear, and it would be the driver and the paramedic in the squad. And we went into Dinwiddie. We went throughout the southern part of Chesterfield, and we were the ALS for all the calls down in Matoka and Dinwiddie and stuff like that. That was as close to what emergency did in Chesterfield that I can remember.
You're spot on, Donnie.
Yeah, we would go and we would drop the paramedic. He would start his ALS. They would put him in the back of the ambulance, and the squad would be right behind the ambulance going to the hospital. And there's many a day that Danny Jenkins looked at me after we got back to the station, and he would ask me, was I Roy DeSoto or Johnny Gage?
That may be where Chief Eanes got the idea for that specific.
I think he did.
That model, yeah.
That model from.
He did spend, and we talked about this a little bit the other day, is he spent some time. He went to LA City more than the county, but he made the comment. He said it was really, it was a very blurry line as to how the city worked versus how the county. They worked very similarly back in those days, at least. Any other things that kind of come to mind that remind you of that?
Say one thing that I realized when I came in, and those guys on Squad 51, man, they were the multi-tool. Those dudes did anything, everything, were able to fix every problem, and I really feel like that was the mantra of Chesterfield Fire and EMS when I came. Whether it was a water shut-off, an EMS call, a structure fire, repairing a pipe for some elderly lady who couldn't fix it, whatever it was, we're going to take care of it. And I think those guys were the exact same way.
They were. And any problem that Captain Stanley ran into, he usually funneled it to Squad 51 and got them to fix it.
Yep. Bobby, how about you? Anything strike your mind as remembering exactly or refreshing towards reminding you of Station 51 or emergency?
6-inch Red Wing boots.
Yep, LA boots. Yep.
Yep. LA boots. I mean, when I left James City County and took my job with Chesterfield, that was the first thought went through my mind when I put on those Red Wing boots. It was like, these are the same boots that Johnny Gage wears.
There you go. I'll give you two that kind of popped into my mind, and And Donnie, you're exactly right with that. With Medic 8 and the Suburban, I got to be part of that a couple of days, and it crossed my mind as well. But do you guys remember the snorkel we had at number 4?
Yeah.
Chesterfield County in bigger letters, Fire Department, and that kind of
Same
always
thing with
harkened.
two truck.
Yep, two truck had it too. Hey, Chesterfield and the big words County Fire Department, just like L.A. County Fire Department. That was one thing that always harkened back for me. And think about the locker room in Station 51, and think about the locker room in Station 15. And do you think there's any similarities drawn between those two with the tall wooden lockers that were really actually closets that were really nice wood paneled closets? So
Station 5 was the same way. Up in Station 5's bunk room, locker room, they actually had their locker room inside the bunk room.
that's right.
Yep.
So those were
Yeah,
a
a
couple.
lot of the fire stations that were built around that same time frame had those tall, long
Wooden lockers.
locker rooms and all wooden doors. And
Station 15, 11, and 4 were all constructed together. And all of them had those tall wooden lockers. I think they were the first stations that had them other than Station 5, like Donnie was saying, and that was previously a volunteer station. But I think those 3 stations, and I know they were built all at the same time, and they were the first ones with the wooden locker doors.
They were nice. They were spacious.
They're very spacious. As far as a chase vehicle, if you want to call it, I would say Company 8 was the epitome of Squad 51, just in a different type of vehicle. As far as the station layout and types of calls, I would say 14 or 3. Anything on the pike, because Station 51 seemed to run a lot of industrial fires, chemical fires, things like that. And I probably ran more of those types of fires between Reynolds Metals, Sun Chemical, the condom plant, Colonial Heights, all types of things that looked similar to what you would see Station 51 running. And some of them were very similar, some of them were not. But I would say anything on the pike would be a similar neighborhood as Squad 51 was.
I hearken back to what Joe said a few minutes ago, and that is that I think the biggest influence that emergency had on our department as a whole was that do whatever you have to do to get it done.
Correct.
You know, and I think that, you know, I know we all had our own thoughts and opinions about Chief Eanes. But you got to admit, the guy knew how to build it.
yeah, always do what's right. You know,
Excellent architect.
one of the episodes I watched just last week, Johnny brought back a dog to the fire station. Well, I can think of many nights at Station 3 where we brought a dog back to the fire station and it stayed in the bathroom locked up, or, you know, until we could get somebody there to care for it. But it was the right thing to do.
That's right. That's the way to do it. All right, well, let's kind of wrap this up, guys. I appreciate your time, but if you could go back, you get to be reincarnated as on the emergency television show. Which character would you go back to? Would you want to be?
Captain Stanley.
Captain Stanley. So, an interesting trivia thing I found out: in the first season, Captain Hammer, first name
Right.
Richard. Read into that what you'd like. He was an actual LA captain for the first half of the first season. They had somebody else come out, and then Michael Norrell came on as Captain Stanley for the rest of it. So he was an interesting cat. I think that'd be a good choice. Very, very calm, cool, collected, mild mannered, and he was one of those guys who reminds me a little bit of Barfield. It would be a dumpster fire or a 12 alarm fire, and he would sound exactly the same way on the radio. It sounds like.
I kind of talked a little bit about it earlier, when I first became a paramedic at number 11 and worked with Dave Powell. I truly, he was like the Roy. He came in and brought that calmness to, something that I was a little wound up about. But, I was that younger guy. So I would probably say Johnny, just, because of that comparison that I have. He and David and I worked together for a long time and really kind of played off of each other like those guys did.
Like the real Johnny and Roy.
Yes, sir.
What about you, Bobby?
Oh, I gotta go with Chet.
Yep.
Chet just seemed to be having a good time every day.
He always did.
He always did. That's right. Donnie, you got one that you would go to?
But he was there. Chet was there when Johnny and Roy needed him every single time. So, but yeah, I'd have to go with Roy.
I too would have to go one of the medics. That's kind of. I mean, when I got on the fire department, that was kind of my ultimate goal, to get that glitter patch on my shoulder, and I was lucky enough that got to go to MCV and got that out of the way.
I thought you were going to say Dixie.
There's another story about Dixie. I want to be Dr. Brackett. That's what I wanted to be. All right. Well, hey, on that note, we got to go. You guys.
Love you,
All
bro.
right, anything else? Anything else you want to chat about? Any other stories you want to tell? Any other semi-lies, Joe Harvey?
I just want to say it's really great to get together with you guys. It's like you say, it'll be 18 years in December. I'm getting close to that point where I'm retired longer than I was on the job.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, I too, man, it's a privilege to me. Like all you guys on here were people that I looked up to when I got on the job. So,
No, Joe, you always had to look down at me.
Hey, I wasn't going to come into any short jokes, Bobby, but since you started, yeah, that's it.
I've been
Brought it on yourself.
Donnie, you can remember the Crenshaw brothers.
Yeah.
They found out that it wasn't too good to do short joke stuff around me.
Yeah, they hit your stool one time, I believe, too, didn't they?
They built me a set of steps to get into the engine.
Talk about the practical jokes. Yep.
Yep.
Those are volunteers, weren't they? Were volunteer
they were.
Yeah.
number 2?
Yeah, they're volunteers too.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, let's wrap this up and let you get back to your dinner hour. I appreciate the time today and joining, and Joe for hosting the remote site there at the Casa de Harvey. Appreciate everything.
Hey, it's
Donnie
5
Hall,
o'clock
Bobby
somewhere.
Isaac, Lee Williams, Joe Harvey. Thank you guys. Thank you guys for the friendship and telling the stories. Just a shout out to everybody who's listening. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it. If you give it a thumbs up and a like and a subscribe, it really does help get the word out and communicate that we're doing this and sharing these stories out there. If you got any stories of your own, hit me up. Firehouse Logbook at gmail.com is the email address, and make sure you check on Facebook, because since we're recording this via the web, there might be a video clip or two that we might pop out on there. I can't edit the whole thing into it and put it on YouTube, but I might get a snippet or two out there. So, guys, thank you all so much. Hopefully see you soon. Take care.
We enjoyed it. Thank you.
Nice.